Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head on uatv and I'm Andriyuk. Let my people go. This hashtag named the global human rights campaign, which aims at liberation of Ukrainian political prisoners of the Kremlin. One of them, Volodymyr Balukh, is going through a hunger strike already for a month, trying to protest the verdict of the occupational court in Crimea. Just to remind you, he was arrested for keeping the Ukrainian flag on his house, but falsely accused of storing ammunition and explosives. To talk about his fate and many others, we welcome to the studio today human rights defender Eugenia Andriyuk. Hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Hello.
So first of all, it was reported that Volodymyr Balukh is being denied medical treatment. What is his health condition after a month of such a hunger strike?
Indeed, he is not getting any qualified medical assistance, which is very much needed, especially nowadays in his health state. So basically, after the 3 weeks of the hunger strike, normally the health of the person, there is serious changes within the health. So, and this is also what Vladimir Balukh is facing. So both he's facing loss of weight, what everyone can see and everyone can witness, even when he's in courtroom. So everyone sees that he's losing weight, but also there starting the problems within his digestion and within all other his body. So not only what we can see, but also internally there are problems. However, he's insisting on hunger strike despite the call both of his relatives but also calls of politicians to stop hunger strike. He's insisting and he's going on with his hunger strike.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, because this hunger strike is basically a protest against the verdict of 3.5 years of imprisonment issued by the occupational court, and 22 Ukrainian MPs have signed a letter asking Balukh to start eating, basically to stop this. Do you know about his reaction on such a letter?
He's going on, so he's continuing, and it's basically like his practical, in practice, his answer and response. Unfortunately, there is normal, permanent connection with him because he's imprisoned, and for lawyer to go to visit him, the lawyer needs to wait in the very long queues, and also as the case is politically motivated, the lawyer get very often the refusals to visit him. So that's why it's quite difficult for lawyer to visit him. Except the lawyer, there is a priest of Ukrainian church who is allowed to visit him. He is his public defender. So also he is not allowed as a priest, but as a public defender within his criminal case, and he has access to him. But in the same way, in order to go to prison, the priest in the same way have to wait in this long queues in order to get to the prison. So that's why there is, and as there are no mobile phones, so that's why to get immediately what is his response, what is his reaction is quite difficult. So what we know is very the information which we basically got by chance when something is happening, when someone is finally got access to him.
Such a complicated procedure. Is this usual for every prisoner, or is this being done especially for Ukrainian political prisoners?
So generally within in the Simferopol CISO where he is detained, it's generally one of the worst prisons generally in Crimea, but also it used to be one of the worst prisons before in Ukraine. So that's why there is a general procedure when there is a huge queue, and it includes both relatives but also lawyers or attorneys, but also so anyone who needs to get to prison. However, as for political prisoners, quite often they got refusals, or let's say that the visit should be allowed by police, while then the administration of prison is those who allow to come in. So sometimes the letter which allowing visit is somehow it's lost between police and between prison administration, for example. And we had cases when the wives of political prisoners, she was waiting in the queue since early morning, and then finally during the lunchtime when she is allowed to come in, the prison administration says that somehow they lost her letter and they do not have any letter. Then they go back to police, and police say, okay, we will send it back. So for political prisoners there is a special treatment. That's why this procedure is much more longer for them. And as for the lawyers, there are very few independent attorneys who provide for them legal assistance. That's why many of them have a lot of like workload, so that's why one attorney could have several court settings one day, so that's why for him it's difficult to find like a gap, like the whole working day, for example, just staying in to go to prison. Sometimes some families hire another lawyer just with this aim to go to visit, but as far as I heard from some families, for example, they need like 3 full working days for the lawyer finally to get in prison.
It takes 3 to 4 working days to get
just to stay,
just to one time.
And then it depends how long this visit could be, how long this time could be. Because, for example, when we had cases when wife and mother, they got within the same day the allowance, the permit to visit, and then basically they had half an hour for 2 of them. And then it means 15 minutes for each
of them.
And then also there is quite difficult. There is a glass between the prisoner and between those who visit him. There is someone who is presented from the guard. So, I mean, for sure it's not confidential, it's not like comfortable conditions where they could talk freely, but also they could even like touch each other. They could not touch because there is a glass and they're talking through the like phones, which is also sometimes difficult to listen to. So basically within many political cases what we have the situation is, especially while there is investigation, so with the case of Volodymyr Balukh, he has been sentenced, so it's a bit easy, but before the sentence, the relatives is very often refused to visit the family members. So basically for 9 months, for 10 months, or even for a year,
they cannot get access to their
relatives not visiting. Sometimes lawyers could go, but very rarely.
And you mentioned that this Simferopol pretrial detention center is the worst one in the occupied territories and used to be the worst when this was the territory of controlled by Ukraine. This is the pretrial detention center where Volodymyr Balukh is also held, right? Why is it the worst?
Basically due to its conditions. So it was built, the hardware, it's the same, was built in the 19th century, just after the first annexation of Crimea by Russian Federation during the Ekaterina II, and it's quite ironical is that those who was resisting the first occupation of Crimea back to 100 years ago, some of them, they have been detained in the same place. So first of all, because the building itself is quite old, so there are not all windows, physically there are no glass in all windows. There is quite cold because there is no normal heating system, there is no normal ventilation system. But what we face nowadays is first of all overcrowded of almost all cells. So, for example, in a cell where there should be 10 or 12 people, there is normally 19 or 20. So it means that they sleep just by turn. Someone is sleeping while the other one is just standing.
Is waiting until the other one is...
That's why, and then there is no division for smokers and no-smokers, so that's why basically like those people who smoke, and there is no normal ventilation, so that's why all this like smoke is in the cell. And we had a case with Digirmendry, with Bekirara Digirmendry, who's basically his health state has deteriorated because he has asthma, and in these conditions he got very serious deterioration, and he was basically hospitalized, and he was in the very critical health state due to that. So this is like the basic things, but then after that there is a nutrition, which for sure is very poor, and not always the prisoners could get some parcels from the outside world. There is what we mentioned before, the touch and the connection with the outside world. And then for political prisoners, very specific is the attitude from the prison administration and from police, which sometimes we know that they got beaten while during or sometimes they got to fines or to some sanctions as imprisonment in more harsher conditions, in more harsher cells. even on some like minor reasons or without any reasons, it's just arbitrary. And for Muslims, for sure, there is also specificity with the attitude. They are not provided with those foods that they could eat, and sometimes they are denied with religious literature. And the last point is for sure medical assistance, because basically people are not getting any medical assistance, and we know that at least, unfortunately, there is no normal information, no access, but we know that at least 20 people died in this pre-trial detention.
20 people? You mean 20 Ukrainians?
Yes. At least, I mean, it could. This number could be much more, because basically there is no medical assistance. Only if a person really feels very bad, like in critical situations, then the doctor can come, but then he gives like 1 or 2 pills, and that's all. So, and it basically depends the saving of the life, depending very much on the prison mates, on the cellmates, those who can somehow like make some noise, protest against this. But the problem is that no medical assistance is provided, and one of the political prisoner who has been detained there, he said that if you got sick in a pre-trial detention, in this pre-trial detention center in Simferopol, then it means that you are dead, because you would not get any medical assistance.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Is it the worst just because of the living condition, or also because of this severe and very violent behavior towards the detainees? And it is also reported, it's about my next question, that Volodymyr Balukh is pressured by the administration of the Simferopol pre-trial detention facility. This was said by the deputy chairman of the Crimean human rights group, Volodymyr Chernyhyn, not to mention that he was severely beaten also. But after the sentence issued, what is the exact pressure in this Simferopol pre-trial detention facility that he could talk about?
Well, as for Vladimir Balukh, also there is a criminal investigation, a criminal case against him that allegedly he has beaten one of the prison staff, but it was not in Simferopol CISO, it was back before when he was in the isolator, like it was police isolator, and there was a head of this police isolator with whom Vladimir used to have a conflict even before his arrest. And then, like this policeman beaten him, and they used to have a conflict. And then the lawyer of Vladimir Balukh complained on the behavior of this policeman. However, afterwards it turned out that there was a complaint of this policeman against Vladimir Balukh, that Vladimir Balukh, being detained, beaten him. And there is a criminal investigation going on, so that's basically the third criminal case against Vladimir Balukh, because those on which he was accused and on which he was sentenced, it was the second one. And also before his detention, there was another criminal case when he was also like sentenced for not obeying the police. So with Vladimir Balukh, I think there is the most critical case when we have a criminal case which is against political prisoner, because on the conflict with policemen, when policeman claims that he was beaten by him, which is quite ridiculous.
Yes,
so this is like the situation which is like very critical with him. And as for a question, what is the most probably makes this center more terrible? I would say that it's probably this attitude of police, because even while Crimea was under Ukraine control, it was the same center, but we didn't register those times the same number of deaths or the same like harsh treatment, because the attitude was different. It was more milder and more softer conditions, and it was not so harsh control and so harsh demands from the prison administration. So this basically gave a chance for prisoners in this very bad physical conditions, but somehow to cope with. It was allowed. There was no limitation, for example, for parcels. Any parcels that come in from the outside world, it could be like any weight, basically, which is now there is a limitation by 30 kilos, which includes, for example, blankets and clothes. So there is no separate division. And the cellmates were, for example, the prisoners during the Ukraine control of Crimea were allowed to make some reparation within their cells. Well, it could be ridiculous, however, it allowed them to cope with these conditions.
Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but that was really interesting conversation, and thank you for that. That was Eugenia Andriyuk, human rights defender. Thank you for watching this interview, and stay with UATV.